Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the second day of the ISF Virtual Congress. We are very excited for this panel discussion on the future of the seed industry beyond COVID-19. Our goal this session is to gather some key learnings from seed companies and farmers about our recent collective experience. Specifically, we want to know how this experience sets the tone for the future of the seed sector as we take a closer look at the role and position of seed in the value chain. We have an exceptional panel today who will share their vision of the future, and you've heard their opening statements in the previous session. So for those of us joining on this live Q&A on Zoom, there is a Q&A button that you can click and you can send your comments and questions for the speakers. So let me introduce them a little bit. Joining us from the Netherlands is Mr. Marco van Leeuwen, Managing Director of Rijk Zwaan and Second Vice President of ISF. We also have with us, calling from India, Dr. Usha Barwale Zehr, who is the Director and Chief Technology Officer of MAHYCO and former Chair of the ISF Breeders Committee. We have our ISF board member, Mr. David Malan, who is the Managing Director of the South African seed producer Klein Karoo. And also calling from South Africa, we have none other than the President of the World Farmers Organization, Mr. Theo de Jager. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so I'd like to get the discussion going with Dr. Usha. You mentioned in your statement that farming at the core is always challenged, and this is what makes farmers resilient too. In your opinion, what structural changes need to happen, and how can we in the seed sector respond to help meet the needs of our main customers, the farmers?
Great. Thank you, Francine. If we look at the farmers in India, we are primarily catering to smallholder farmers. Smallholder farmers with a land holding of less than 2 hectares is our 80+% of our farmer customer base. And so when we think about resilience, these farmers really have to focus on what is it that they're going to grow and how much income they're going to generate from this. COVID-19 has presented new opportunities as well as challenges. So from a farmer's perspective, the farmer wants to ensure that they're de-risking their crop as much as possible by possibly going to, instead of one hybrid or variety, they will go to two or three different ones to make sure that at least one of them is going to give them the expected performance and as a result livelihood. From a seed industry perspective, I think one of the key learnings for us has been, and also looking ahead, is how do we get information to the farmer to make these smallholder farms productive, and also create linkages for the farmers so that they have good opportunity in terms of marketing the produce which they harvest from their fields. So this digitization piece becomes critical in terms of, because if we look at the penetration of cell phones in India, it's increased dramatically and continues to go up every day. But not only of the smartphones, but also using your older models of the phone, we are still able to get information to the farmer. And how do we empower the farmer as an industry with information and knowledge, I think becomes critical as we look ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Usha. The next question I have is for Marco. You've observed how quickly governments reacted to secure food production as an essential service. From your experience, how did this impact the activities of your company in continuing seed movement? And in general, how has COVID-19 impacted the relationship between government and the seed sector?
Thank you, Francine. Well, in our company, as soon as the crisis started, we reached out to all our subsidiaries, basically all over the world, emphasizing the importance of seed and the urgency also to plead for an exempted regime. And somewhat later, this was supported by the very well-written statement from ISF. And for us as a company, this meant we could continue business, however, not as usual, with quite some constraints, but we were able to move seeds. That was very important. And I think that many governments realized suddenly, and also more than ever, that there is a seed sector and that everything starts with a seed. And a lot of national seed associations, I think, played a great role in bringing together the companies and the seed associations and the governments, and to put this on the attention, on the radar of politicians. And I'm really convinced that also in the future, this will lead to better contacts and better understanding between society, regulators, and the seed sector.
Thanks, Marco. Following this discussion on government and seed industry relationship, David, you mentioned that the South African Seed Association, SANSOR, together with the Agricultural Business Chamber, were instrumental in coordinating with government to ensure the continued movement of seed in South Africa. What lessons can be gained on engaging with the government and public authorities?
Thank you, Francine. Let me first start by saying I'm so sorry that we are not having these discussions in South Africa with the expectation of having a good South African wine later today. But in 2 years from now, we hope to welcome you. So look forward to 2022, and we'll then continue this discussion then. But getting back to your question, a couple of years ago already, the South African Industry, SANSOR, the national organization, realized the value of having very good relations with government. So we set up a bilateral discussions with government on a 6-monthly basis, discussing matters and setting up partnerships with government, but also partnerships with sister organizations, farmer organizations, like also like the Agricultural Business Chamber. And, you know, lessons learned from this is that those investments that we made in partnerships definitely helped us a lot now to get very swift and fast action from government and assistance from government. So the communications channels were open because we already established those before. And we made sure that we had good communication with government, and the benefits of that is reaped now. So the lesson is, stay in contact with government. We need them as much as what they need us.
Thanks, David. Now I want to shift the conversation a little bit towards science and technology. And Theo, in your speech, you made quite a powerful statement there when you said that there's no way we can meet the challenges of our time today and tomorrow if the answers we seek are not science-based. Would you like to elaborate more on this?
Yes, I think if there's something which COVID has really brought to the surface, it is how shallow the emotions around food issues are. And because everybody's got access to WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter and all other kinds of social media platforms, rumors tend to run away from us. We have seen countries close their borders for trade. We have seen people changing their diets because they believe it is healthy, or they believe that they are going to run out of some stuff. Hence, for us as farmers, it is so utterly important that the decisions we make and the policies we develop and the way we do advocacy towards our governments must always be based in science, or if not, it is simply not sustainable. And this pertains not only to what we grow, but also how we grow it. It's got to do with how we do our marketing, how we approach our consumers, how we establish what exactly the market wants for us. And more than ever before in the history of farming, a closer relationship between farmers and scientists, not only in the natural sciences, but also in the social sciences, is of utter importance now. So currently, we are in the market for partnerships with scientists like never before.
Thanks for that, Theo. And now I'm continuing with this topic. Usha, online and digital tools have been gaining prominence, and you mentioned that there is an appetite for farmers for these type of tools. What do you think can help accelerate the uptake of digital tools among farmers?
What we're seeing, Francine, in our customer base is that the farmers are, because they're not able to travel to different markets, even close to their homes as much as they would have done in a normal situation. They're all turning to their mobile phones to try and get as much information as possible. Now, the question and the greater traction will come if we're able to offer content which is relevant. So today, we don't have, for instance, advisory for farmers for all relevant crops. Now, as the content builds, the farmer would, I would expect, would be even more inclined to use these digital tools. The biggest driver at the end of the day is if the farmer sees value. Now, if the digitization helps in farmers getting access to or visibility, actually, rather than even access, but visibility as to what is out there in the marketplace and what could be relevant for them, and then have an opportunity whereby they can connect to a buyer who will provide them a fair price for the produce. These elements would really drive the digitization piece.
Thanks for that. And David, as a seed producer, you have a unique perspective to offer. And you also said that technology is the biggest opportunity to embrace right now. What does this mean for seed production in particular?
I think, Francine, thank you for the question. I think the most important thing is, for especially Southern Hemisphere production, we are relying very much on this time of the year when ISF has to report back to our clients during the ISF meeting, telling them what happened in the past season, and we missed that opportunity. So now we have to rely very heavily on other methods of communication to also discuss with clients the past season, but also the new season which is ahead of us. More importantly is the fact that because of international borders that are closed, the experts of our customers, which is seed production experts, will use this time to come and visit us. This is during flowering and also during seed set, to see for themselves the yields, the expected yields, to look for diseases, to look for isolation distances, to get a perspective on the crop, because that is where they build trust in what we do. Now with borders closed, this is not going to be possible. So we have to find alternatives, and technology is that alternative in which we can create better reports, better visual material in order to report better to our client that even though they are not able to come and see the crop for themselves, that they are still in a position that they have total confidence, not only in the quality of the product, but also in the integrity of the product that we will deliver to them. So I can see that the use of technology has not only arrived, but it's in seed production to stay. And also at the ISF Seed Production Working Group, we are discussing ways and means to employ technology in seed production.
Now, from seed production and farming, I want to go a little bit further down the value chain. And Marco, you noted that there are recent trends pointing to an increase in consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables. Do you think that this will carry on once normalized situations come back? And what can the seed industry do to influence consumers' choices towards healthy food?
Interesting question, Francine. Of course, I hope that this trend of increased consumption continues. However, honestly, I'm also fearing a bit that we might get back to normal. And back to normal means that, relatively spoken, the consumption of fresh food and fruit and vegetables is not increasing. And in fact, in some parts of populations even decrease. I think what we as industry can do about this is, in the first place, to create varieties, and I'm talking here specifically about vegetables and fruits, is to create varieties that are tasty and appealing. Honestly, to my opinion, health claims, if allowed at all, are not enough to convince consumers, and in some cases might even scare consumers a bit off. Secondly, I think it's important to join forces as well, since this is about the whole seed sector and its potential market, its future potential. And it would not be strange, I think, to coordinate some kind of collaborative marketing and promotion efforts through global platforms like ISF. I think that would be very helpful and strong. And I also know that there are quite some governments and health insurance companies willing to buy in as long as the proposition from the seed sector is clear enough. So I would say we really have to work hard for our future market. And there is a lot of competition towards the stomach of the consumer in the end that we have to face. And joining forces, I think, here is crucial.
Thanks for that. The next question I have is for Theo. You mentioned in your speech the importance of sustainable farm practices and producing in a smart way. How do you see farmers and the seed sector working together going forward in a way that is sustainable? And this is a question we've received similarly from Mr. Mark Kool. He was asking, how can farmers and the seed industry better work together to create increased understanding and trust with society on the use of technology?
I know it's a controversial way to start this answer, but the most important aspect of sustainability is profitability. If a farming enterprise is not profitable, it is simply not sustainable, because farming is a business. And to be profitable, it means that you need to spend less to produce than what you get for your products at the end. Hence, the costing structures and the yields and the economy of scale has got everything to do with the sustainability too, but also the environmental issues. And I'm very grateful towards the organized seed sector for the partnering up with the World Farmers Organization on the Climate Makers campaign, where we try to bring the answers which are thrown against the heads of farmers on environmental sustainability, biodiversity issues, and these. But I think most important of all is that the discussion on how to ensure that we produce more on less and with less, and the role of improved seeds in that narrative has never been more important than now. In building back better after COVID-19, we need to address issues such as poverty and food shortages, especially in Africa, Central America, northern parts of Latin America, and Southeast Asia. We need to create wealth through the soil. If ever there was an opportunity to bring about a major paradigm shift in the concept of smallholder farming and to ensure that there's profitability in smallholder farming by using improved seeds and better fertilizer, and it goes with mechanization, it is now after the lockdown periods.
I'm seeing several questions here on digitalization. I think this is very interesting for our audiences. They're asking if there are opportunities to create new distribution channels through digitalization, such as e-commerce, for the seed companies, for Rijk Zwaan and MAHYCO. Is this an opportunity that you are looking at right now? Shall we start with Usha?
Yes, certainly. Actually, what we have seen this season already, even before the lockdown, number of different e-commerce platforms for agriculture have been at play. And what we have seen after the lockdown has an increased activity and transactions on these platforms. So some of the key elements of these digital platforms which are gaining traction is the availability of product which is offered. So the more SKUs you have on the platform, the greater the interest the farmers, or in some cases, the retailer shows. Like for instance, on Grow Online, we have products from seed companies for retailers. On some of the other platforms like AgroVision, the farmers directly can purchase products from the different sellers who are on the platform. So this is just an example of how digitization is really playing into it. I also just wanted to address one other question that I see, which I feel is very important, and it's around quality. So one of the questions is around, just because you have digitization, what does it mean for quality? So I want to re-emphasize that the quality is as per the seed laws which prevail in the country. So just because you're offering the product on a digital platform does not take away from what it is that the customer, the farmer, or the retailer will get. So thank you.
Marco, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, maybe a few things in addition. We were lucky as a company to have our e-commerce strategy ready prior to the COVID-19 outbreak. So we are piloting in a few countries what can be done. And for us, an e-commerce strategy would be a kind of inclusive strategy. We would not only supply seeds, but we also see great possibilities to share information and to deliver additional services for farmers and for stakeholders in the value chain that might make our proposition more attractive. And it also means a complete different way of working, honestly, which we all have to adapt also here internally to. So quite some challenges ahead that will now speed up more than ever because of the current situation.
Thanks. I want to go now to the question on changing cropping patterns and changing sowing patterns. And this is a question I'd like to give to David to talk about it from the seed production side, and then later to Theo to talk about it from the crop production side. David.
Exactly the question again, Francine?
There is a question here that asks, the changing cropping patterns or changing sowing patterns have occurred. How does the seed industry react to this?
Okay, this is thank you for the question. This is almost more a climate change question than a COVID question, but I'm happy to answer this. Yes, for sure. It's a very big concern for us because we can see that day length does not change, but the climate is changing. So getting later cold and later warm, and sort of the whole shifting pattern in terms of temperatures, but temperature zones does not change. So in crops like, for instance, onions, which we do a lot of, we have the challenge that we have to do it within certain day lengths because we work with short day, medium day, and long day onions. And this means that if the climate is shifting, you can't shift the sowing dates and time dates along with it because you need to do it in a certain day length. So this is causing considerable challenges for us. And for sure, climate change is there. It's a reality. We see more and more impacts in terms of climate disasters. But in all, it's something that we have to mitigate, and we have to find new ways of doing things in the circumstances because it is what it is, and it will get definitely more of a reality in the future.
Thanks, Theo. Would you like to add to this?
Yes, thank you. It's such an important question, this. No one is as vulnerable to climate change than the world's farmers are. And we also realize that no one can do more about it for us than we can do ourselves in partnership with all the other input providers. And whilst there is a movement away from certain products, certain commodities, because of that, there's always this seeking of solutions out of the box. How can I do things differently to ensure that my sustainability and my profitability be maintained? But in this process, data will play the critical role. We need to measure exactly what impact is of different production processes, what the performance of certain varieties are and certain kinds of seeds. And this is not a job for the farmers alone, and it's not a job for the seed industry alone. This is, if I can go back to the previous question you asked me, this is absolutely where we need to take hands between the producer and the seed companies and share that data and ensure that the solutions we get to are based on reliable data. And as sensors get cheaper and cheaper, it is actually much more easier these days to move over to precision farming, where you can get the best result from each square meter of your farm.
Thanks, Theo. I have a question here on seed piracy that I would like to direct to Marco. He is asking, seed piracy is a serious global issue. How is the ISF addressing this issue to help protect farmers globally, as well as genuine seed production companies to help protect their R&D investment? I think it's a very good question.
Yes, very interesting indeed. Well, in the first place, I think it's good to mention that dealing with IP rights and infringements is something that needs to be done on the ground in the respective countries. So there is a big role for the breeding companies and authorities in those countries, national seed associations, to work on this. The role of ISF is to basically to sketch the bigger picture and to facilitate sharing of knowledge and best practices with those national seed associations and stakeholders in the value chain, and to create also awareness on what is actually going on in the world. Infringement of intellectual property rights related to seed is an increasing issue, and we really have to give that sufficient attention.
Thanks, Marco. Is there anyone who wants to add to this commentary on seed piracy? Yes, David.
Yes, I think also, in seed production, this has always been one of the concerns. So we have recently started with various things in the seed production working group. And the short of this is that it is the responsibility of everyone, from seed production right through the chain up to sales, to do everything we can to protect the IP rights and to make sure that the investment that breeding companies are making all the time are being protected for the benefit of everybody.
Yes, Theo, please.
Thank you. If I also can take a bite at the apple. I'm not satisfied that enough is being done to recruit more countries into the ambit of the UPOF agreements. There are so many countries, especially here in our neck of the woods in Africa, where there is no access to improved seeds because the countries have not yet signed the UPOF agreements on intellectual property rights. And then one wonders, when you engage with the Minister of Agriculture of those countries, who is actually trying to lure them into the ethos where there's respect for property rights. And I'm fearing that the farmers might think the seed companies are doing it, and the seed companies might think that the UN in UPOF is doing it, and they might think that it's pressure from us as the farmers who will get those ministers to sign up. And maybe we should embark on a more concerted effort to get those countries into the file.
Thanks, Theo. We are down to the last few minutes of our live Q&A, and I want to use this time to ask everyone to give a final, to give a conclusion, to give a final statement on the topic of this session, which is the future of the seed industry beyond COVID-19. Could you share us what your vision of the future is? Let me start with Usha.
Great. I think there have been some questions on the sustainability piece by a few of the participants. So I want to conclude this part of it with saying that we need to look at the seed industry, need to look at and also promote agriculture as a solution, and how do we incentivize the farmer and work with the farmer to follow and adapt regenerative practices which are beneficial both for the farmer as well as the seed industry. And so rather than looking at agriculture as the problem, how do we look at agriculture as a solution and creating incentive structures?
Thanks, Usha. Marco?
Yes, maybe first, if you allow me briefly to react on the things that Theo mentioned about UPOF 91. It is so that in the new key strategic objectives within ISF that we are working currently upon, more attention for the rollout of UPOF 91 is embedded, is included, and that is indeed a joint effort which we need to take care of altogether. And then towards the future, I would say a lot of developments are out of our hands, beyond our control. The question, however, is how quickly and precise we can react to those developments. And just to give you a few examples, because there are a lot of things that might go wrong, but there are also great opportunities. If labor gets scarce, we could develop varieties that require less labor, that are more suitable for mechanization and automatic harvesting or processing in a factory. If retailers would reduce their stock keeping units, if they would simplify their processes, for sure we would be able to find solutions there to create mainstream varieties. And if certain supply chains would be broken, like catering, food service, and tourism supply chains, the question is then, do you as a company, as an industry, have the networks and the contacts to source new customers for your clients? New channels like online, grow your own. So there are a lot of possibilities as well. And I think what is happening now, it comes with a big bang, but it's also about staying competitive in a very volatile business landscape, and this is what the seed sector is all about.
Thanks, David. Would you like to add?
Yes, absolutely, Francine. I think I hear the term the new normal very regularly, and I think maybe this is not quite where we at. I think also we have to realize that this is a little bit of a temporary abnormal, and things will get better in the future. But just by looking at the opportunities that the seed industry is offering, I think in the recent past I've spoken to many companies, and in general most companies have done a little bit better, as Marco has already mentioned. But I also think that there is awareness that many countries in Africa, for sure, are looking at agriculture, at the way at which they will revive their economies. Their economies was hurt, like everybody else's, but agriculture will be the means, the basis from which economies will be revived. And that will create opportunities for seed businesses in Africa, but also around the world. And I think also in Africa, we have seen over the last couple of years that eating habits has been changing because of influences of cultures coming into Africa. And that means Africa is more susceptible to new varieties, new types than ever before. And I think there is going to be more opportunities than not. So I think also we need to look at the positive side, and we need also to look at the future positively, and not also almost only at the negative side of it. So thank you very much from my side.
Thank you, David. And finally, Theo.
If I may, Francine, I see there's also somebody who asked on chat about the NGOs who are actually putting pressure on governments not to sign the UPOF agreements, and so and if I can make a plea to the seed industry, not to engage with farmers in any other way than through legitimate farmers' organizations. You cannot just go to an organization who claim to represent 4 million farmers in Eastern Africa, but there are not 4 million farmers who know that they are being represented by those organizations. And these organizations, and I know those NGOs, they are all over Africa and Southeast Asia and Latin America. They are also preaching against the use of fertilizer, against mechanization. And of course, they always take target at the improved seeds. They're actually working very hard and spending a lot of money to keep our farmers poor. There has never been a better time to up the game in agricultural output in the poorest part of the world than now after lockdown. And if you don't run into these gaps, the gaps will not soon open again. If ever there was a time to expand business in the mechanization, the modernization, and the commercialization of agriculture, it is now.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Theo. I would like to thank all of our speakers today for this very lively and enlightening discussion. I'm afraid this is all the time we have today, but we will see you later today. To those who are watching, we have in a few hours another excellent set of panelists to continue the discussion on this topic, on the future of the seed industry. So thank you very much to all our speakers and to those who joined us via the Q&A in the chat. Goodbye, everyone.